The vampire hysteria of Exeter, Rhode Island, is one of the most famous examples of New England folklore and superstition. During the 19th century, many communities in rural New England struggled to understand diseases that claimed the lives of family members, one after another. Without modern medical knowledge, some people turn to supernatural explanations. One of the most well-known cases occurred in Exeter, Rhode Island in 1892 and involved a young woman named Mercy Brown. The events surrounding Mercy Brown's death and the actions taken by her family became one of the most documented vampire legends in American history. Although modern science has explained the true cause of the tragedy, the story remains an important example of how fear, disease, and folklore can influence human behavior. During the 19th century, tuberculosis was one of the deadliest diseases in the United States. At the time, the illness was commonly known as consumption because it appeared to consume the victim's body. Patients often experienced weight loss, fatigue, coughing, fever, and difficulty breathing. Medical knowledge during this period was limited. Germ theory had not yet become widely accepted in many rural communities, and the true cause of tuberculosis was not well understood by the general public. Families often watched multiple relatives become sick over several years, creating a sense of helplessness and fear. In New England, old European vampire traditions blended with local folklore. Some communities came to believe that a deceased family member could somehow drain the life force of surviving relatives. These beliefs led to a series of unusual practices, including the exhumation of bodies suspected of being vampires. Exeter, Rhode Island was a small, rural community where such beliefs remained influential. It was within this environment that the Mercy Brown case unfolded. The Brown family experienced a series of devastating losses due to tuberculosis. The first family member to die was Mary Eliza Brown, the mother of the family. Shortly afterward, her daughter, Mary Olive Brown, also died from the disease. Several years later, Mercy Brown and her brother Edwin became ill with similar symptoms. Edwin's condition worsened, and his family feared he would soon die. Mercy herself passed away on January 17th, 1892, at only 19 years of age. Because the disease had already claimed multiple members of the family, local residents began searching for an explanation. Many people believed that one of the deceased relatives was responsible for causing the illness of the surviving family members. As Edwin's health continued to decline, pressure grew on the Brown family to investigate whether one of their deceased relatives had become a vampire. The idea that the dead could harm the living was not unique to Exeter. Similar cases had occurred throughout New England during the 19th century. Communities facing repeated outbreaks of tuberculosis sometimes turned to folk traditions when conventional medicine failed to provide answers. Neighbors and local residents reportedly encouraged George Brown, Mercy's father, to examine the bodies of deceased family members. The belief was that a vampire's corpse would appear unusually well preserved and might contain fresh blood even after death. These signs were interpreted as evidence that the deceased individual remained active after death and was drawing energy from surviving relatives. As Edwin Brown grew weaker, community concern intensified. Eventually, local authorities and townspeople agreed to exhume the bodies of several Brown family members. In March 1892, the bodies of Mary Eliza Brown, Mary Olive Brown, and Mercy Brown were removed from their graves for examination. The bodies of Mary Eliza and Mary Olive had decomposed as expected. However, Mercy's body appeared unusually well preserved. This was largely because she had been buried during the cold winter months and stored in a crypt where temperatures slowed decomposition. To many observers, however, the condition of the body seemed extraordinary. Reports indicated that blood was found in the heart and other organs. Modern science recognizes this as a normal result of decomposition under certain conditions, but many people at the time interpreted it as evidence of vampirism. Following local tradition, Mercy's heart and liver were removed and burned. The ashes were mixed into a liquid that Edwin Brown was instructed to drink as a cure for his illness. Unfortunately, the ritual had no effect, as Edwin died of tuberculosis several months later. The exhumation of Mercy Brown became one of the most famous vampire-related incidents in American history. Newspapers across the country reported on the story, often portraying it as an example of rural superstition. The event attracted widespread attention because it occurred relatively late in American history. By 1892, scientific medicine was becoming increasingly common, yet traditional folk beliefs still had influence on many communities. Mercy Brown herself had never been accused of wrongdoing during her life. The vampire accusation emerged only after her death, as frightened family members and neighbors searched for answers to a deadly disease they did not understand. Today, Mercy Brown is remembered not as a vampire, but as a victim of tuberculosis and the fear that surrounded the disease. Modern historians generally agree that tuberculosis was responsible for the illnesses that affected the Brown family. The disease spreads through bacteria and can infect multiple members of the same household over time. The appearance of Mercy's body is also explained scientifically. Cold temperatures and certain burial conditions slowed decomposition, creating the impression that her body remained unusually fresh. Psychologists and historians have suggested that vampire beliefs provided a way for communities to cope with tragedy. When faced with repeated deaths and limited medical knowledge, people often sought explanations that fit within their cultural traditions. While some paranormal enthusiasts continue to discuss the case, there is no evidence that supernatural forces were involved. The Mercy Brown case is well documented through newspaper reports, local records, and historical accounts. These sources provide valuable information about both the event itself and the beliefs of the community. Medical evidence strongly suggests that tuberculosis was the main cause of the family's illnesses. Historical records also confirm that exhumation practices occurred in several New England communities during this period. The case demonstrates how cultural beliefs can influence the interpretation of physical evidence. Observations that appeared supernatural in 1892 are now understood through modern science. Because of the extensive documentation surrounding the event, the Mercy Brown case remains one of the best studied examples of vampire folklore in the United States. Many scholars have also noted similarities between New England vampire traditions and earlier European folklore. These connections demonstrate how cultural beliefs can survive and adapt over time. Today, Mercy Brown's grave remains a point of interest for visitors and researchers. The case is frequently discussed in books about vampires, folklore, and American history. The story continues to fascinate people because it combines real historic events with themes commonly associated with horror fiction. The exhumation of Mercy Brown remains one of the most famous examples of vampire folklore in American history. Although science has provided clear explanations for the events, the story continues to capture public imagination more than a century later. The events of 1892 serve as a reminder of how communities respond to uncertainty and how folklore can influence real-world actions.